It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we move into a Monday. Gary, how are you?
Well, I can justify starting the show talking about golf.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
You know, because Trump was, the live golf thing over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
So there I am yesterday afternoon, and there's a lot of different sports on. But I'm doing my show prep as always, because Sunday is a work day for us. Because we have to work Sunday night. So there I am, and I'm scanning. And all of a sudden I get to Fox, and it's the live golf for Miami. Like, whoa,
all right.
What's going on here? It's on Fox. I knew they'd signed a deal with like Fox Sports 1, but I didn't know Fox was going to carry him. Well, Fox had him on. And I just commented on live golf the other day. Well, number one, and you'll be happy about this, they're making them wear pants now.
Don't forget to wear pants.
That's something that you've always talked about. You got to start the day. You got to put on your pants. They're wearing pants now instead of shorts.
Yeah.
They didn't talk about it much. It wasn't publicized, but apparently they did it to have more of a professional image.
I'm just learning that they allowed them to wear shorts.
Oh,
before.
yeah, they wore
Wow.
shorts. Secondly, the quality of the audio and the video was good. As I mentioned before, when I would watch it, well, I mean, I've only watched 10 minutes of live golf over the last, 4 years now?
All right.
So it's not a lot of golf. But whenever I turned it on, I was like, the signal isn't good. CW Network was carrying them before. The sound doesn't sound right. It's not balanced. I go, this isn't professional at all. It came across as professional. I didn't hear, and I went back and forth a few times, I didn't hear any music.
Yeah.
Because that's what got me to change the live golf was number one, I'm just I'm not a fan of who sponsors it.
Well, yeah.
But so I'm like, okay, they're doing this. Okay. Trying to, big, and I don't know if you heard this, but late last week, the PGA turned down the deal. They're not going to do a deal with Live.
Right.
Well, right now they're not going to do a deal with Live.
Right.
And I would not with the number of people there, in the United States that watch it on TV.
Yeah.
It was like we talked about it last week, like less than 100,000. We're like CNN has more of an audience, and but then they went to and in the team golf, and I went click, and I was done. I turned it back just to check to see if there was any music. Just for about 10 seconds, but yeah.
Well, all right.
But here we go. What a weekend it was, huh?
Yeah, it's a crazy weekend. Don't look at the Dow. Think about other things, like kittens, sunshine, rainbows.
The blue bonnets are out in Texas.
Hey, the blue bonnets are out in Texas. Hey, go outside. There's the thing. Go outside. Now, in Texas, in North Texas, it's cold right now. Still, go outside. We know it's dark, but go outside. Don't look at the Dow.
Dow futures down.
Stop looking at the Dow, Gary.
1,100.
Earlier, it was down as much as 1,500.
Yep. S&P down 3.63%. NASDAQ down 4.6%. Oil now, by the way, my local gas station is not dropping as fast as the oil prices are.
No, it never does.
So NASDAQ future down almost 5%.
Where's oil?
Oil's at 60.35.
Wow.
The latest. I normally hardly ever, and I didn't really answer a lot of people over the weekend because I can't. I had one person write to me and ask me, do tariffs work? I'm like, well, I don't understand what you mean. for what goal. A lot of people work, but what is the goal of, of work? And then somebody else wrote to me. A lot of people wrote to me, and they'll send me, well, this is what this guy says. This is what this guy says. This is what this guy said. And as I said, I don't care really what anybody says, because if you see over the weekend, what you saw is people cherry pick what they want.
Yeah.
For example, they cherry pick and say, well, there it is. Trump wins because 50 countries have called him. Well, yeah, there's a lot of countries saying, we don't put any tariffs on you. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I'm sure, in fact, every country's trying to call you.
And I think that Trump last night on Truth Social and the other things that he said made it worse. I was like, oh, God, shut up. The stock market's not going to be good tomorrow. And he goes, yeah, we're willing to make a deal, but only making a deal if the trade is completely balanced between every country.
Yeah, because he told them, that's what he told the media. They were talking to him on Sunday. He says, I'm not going to accept a trade imbalance. It's impossible.
Right.
It's impossible. You
It's
can't
impossible.
have these countries that have nowhere near the GDP of what we have are never going to buy as much from us as we buy from them.
No.
That's not going to happen.
You can't. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Well, if
that is the standard, then it's set. Otherwise, he goes back on his own standard.
Yeah. That's the standard last night.
Yeah, right. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. If he comes out with a deal and it's not a balanced trade, then he'll get nothing but questions on, well, you said you weren't going to do it. You weren't going to accept a trade imbalance. So you either have to go back on your word or it is set.
Yeah. I answered somebody yesterday. I said, I can tell you what tariffs do, as we have said. When you increase the cost of doing business, you will do less business. You will put the pressure on prices rising, and therefore you'll cause layoffs. Yeah. You're asking me what the president is doing, what I think about it. I don't know. I can analyze, as you just did, what he said last night is impossible, and I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But that's maybe the, 10th or 11th goal that they have had from the beginning of this. I have no idea what they want. He'll say this, then Lutnick will say something else, Navarro will say something else, and you're like, the whole thing. They were still, but even yesterday, Trump saying it's about a negotiation, and his surrogates are out there saying it's not about a negotiation.
Well, and Lutnick Sunday morning was saying that a number of countries were wanting to negotiate, alluding to the fact that they were willing to negotiate. I don't know. I'll tell you this. There are so many days that the Dow can drop as much as it's dropped in the past 2 days. You can't go like that forever. In fact, I'd say another 20 days or so, based on the drops of the last two trade sessions combined. That's about how long you got. If you want to hold on, then I guess hold on. Trump calls this medicine. Other people call it their retirement. So I guess we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, Trump remember, I forgot when it was, but I remember he said, when we do the tariffs, they'll be precise and targeted.
Yep.
It's not what we did. So, like I said, I don't know, because I don't know what the goal of the administration is. I know what the goal of the administration was, as you just pointed out, from last night. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it changes this morning. Mm-hmm. And when the result of what you're doing is tanking the stock market, I think that you owe the citizens of the United States absolute clarity and have a consistent goal. You know, you look at it, it came out, I saw more of them on Sunday, even when the future started going. You got to trust the president. You got to trust the president. Why? Well, because he's done other things well. Well, no, I look at each issue separate from the other one. There are things I agree with what he has done because he has had absolute clarity and been blunt about it. Immigration, we know that, right?
Yeah.
Right. The Houthis, Iran, what we see going on there now, a lot of consistency there. But on trade, remember when Trump did USMCA, Trump said it was the greatest trade agreement ever. Now the message is it's a piece of crap. Trump did it. He negotiated it. Said it was the greatest. Now he's communicating it's the worst. If he screwed that up, why should I trust him here?
Well,
somebody tell me.
Again, if we're going down the Lutnick-Navarro thing and also something Trump himself has believed in for ages. He's talked about trade imbalances for ages. Right. Then, you know, if because he's good at other things. Michael Jordan was arguably the best of all time, the GOAT on the basketball court, on the baseball diamond, not so much. This might be the one thing he's not good at. I'll tell you right now, based on what the markets are saying, if we're to hold his plan, then tell me how much longer we can do it. I can tell you right now, based on the last 2 trade sessions, about 20 more trade sessions. That's what you got.
That might be optimistic.
And think about that.
Well, as you know,
think about where we would be if we got below 30K on the Dow. Not even to zero. Below 30K on the Dow.
Well, the thing is,
and by the way, if Capitol Hill, if the GOP on Capitol Hill, if they don't respond by then, they take at some point they take ownership in this, which I think they will respond. There will be a response by Capitol Hill at some point because you're going to have enough Democrats on board to do that. But once you do that, that's the fracturing of the party.
Yeah. If it has to go to Congress and Congress has to overrule and you have half of Republicans vote with Democrats to stop it, it's all done. This administration is done at that point.
And the conservative caucus in the House is going to be is going to go back to their agenda, and they're not going, and you're not going to get the votes on the things you want to get done.
I want to make sure I don't forget to go back to USMCA because we called it at the time. We said it at the time. If you're a longtime listener, we said, wow, Trump didn't get anything of what he wanted in USMCA, but he promoted it as the greatest trade agreement ever. All of his people, his, as we call it, the always Trumpers, just went, this is great. See, he changed it completely. And we went, I'll never forget how many times we said it. We went, if they want to believe that, it's okay with us.
If you want to do the victory lap, okay.
Right, go ahead, do the victory lap. But it was much the same as NAFTA. Trump now realizes that.
Mm-hmm.
Trump realizes it, but he doesn't even realize it. He's communicating the fact that he made a horrible free trade agreement in his own mind with Canada and Mexico and South Korea and sold it to you as the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So either he's clueless or he was lying to you back then.
Right.
One or the other.
Right.
So why should I trust him if he totally screwed up USMCA by what he is saying right now about Canada and Mexico, and you can throw in South Korea?
Mm-hmm.
He did it alone.
Right.
He approved it. Congress approved it, but everything that was negotiated, all those, everybody posting those things, 280% tariffs from Canada, Trump negotiated that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so now that he says, I agree with you, he made things way worse yesterday by the True Social thing. And did he say it? Did he say it on the plane also that there can be no trade surplus or trade deficit?
Yeah.
Never going to happen. Never going to happen.
You're never going to have equal trade between
Every country.
like Canada has, 10, 12% of the population that the U.S. has. It's not going to happen. You're never going to have balanced trade. And so the question is he going to stick by that standard or do all of this for nothing when his own standard is not even going to be met in the end?
Yeah.
If his own standard is not going to be met, then tell me what we accomplish here.
That's like saying everybody that you deal with, you need to have an equal trade agreement,
right?
With them. Going to the automobile shop tomorrow, they're going to provide a service for me. I give them money. Mm-hmm. That's like me then expecting them to pay me money to do something for them.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way.
It was really poor. And then I mentioned the Live Golf. Doesn't help. The Democrats pounding. He's out golfing all weekend, having fun.
Oh, Schumer was all over it. I mean, it didn't take long at all. We said it would last week. We said this is what they'll be doing. Yep. And of course, they weren't not going to do that. They went straight to it.
We got a great show ahead.
We do.
866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle before you find yourself stranded roadside this spring. If you're experiencing sluggish cranking, start your spring maintenance routine by having your electrical system tested by a professional technician. Your batteries, alternator, and starter have been working overtime to keep up with cold starts and thick oil during winter. Continuing to crank a vehicle with low voltage will lead to more damage and downtime later on. Big rigs are big investments. Take care of yours now to help avoid downtime later and keep rolling through to next winter.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Here we go. This was Elon Musk commenting. Whoa, he went after Peter Navarro. New York Post had the story. Elon Musk appeared to split from the Trump administration on tariffs as he lashed out at trade advisor Peter Navarro and said he hoped for a zero tariff situation between the U.S. and Europe. The world's richest man made the comments after President Trump announced sweeping tariffs against virtually every U.S. trading partner last week. This was the X page of Insurrection Barbie said, here's Peter Navarro explaining the tariffs, and contrary to the paid fake expert class that is usually on corporate media, Peter Navarro has a Ph.D. in economics from Harvard. Elon Musk's response. A Ph.D. in economics from Harvard is a bad thing, not a good thing. Results in the ego and brain being the number one problem. Whoa.
Yeah.
Bill Ackman also that was supporting the president last week. Did he write that in CNBC? Was that CNBC?
That was New York? They had the article. He was actually on the David Rubenstein show when he said it. Or it may have been in another interview, actually. But he said, and he called it, possible economic winter. But he said, business is a confidence game. The president's losing the confidence of business leaders around the globe. Bill Ackman has been a Trump supporter, to be clear. This isn't somebody who has been anti-Trump at all.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the show, the protest over the weekend. What were they protesting? Nobody can figure out what they were protesting
Right.
again. It was just like, it's, what was it called? I forgot. It popped out of my mind. Oh, hands off. It goes, hands off what? It's like, democracy. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? The billionaires, what are the billionaires doing? The American public voted for the billionaire.
Hitler.
Voted for the billionaire.
Fascist.
It's like,
Racist.
we'll get to that coming up on the show. You know, we said this over and over again, and the president. It seemed like the initial indication was going back months, even though we know that it's a trade imbalance that he's objected to for the last half century. Mm-hmm. He's always been big. He believes that the only people that benefit from trade. This has been a long belief of his. For example, if you buy a car, and you give cash for it, you get the worst of the deal.
Right.
The person who gets the cash gets the best of the deal. We don't know why he thinks that way, but that's what he thinks.
Right.
I can't tell you why he thinks that way. But even if we agreed, and we said this a bunch of times last week, even if we agreed on everything that he was doing, and with reciprocal tariffs, yes, if he would have come out and said they have this tariff on us, and until they take that tariff down because we want all free trade. Because you have his supporters out there yesterday saying Trump wants free trade. You know, for example, I saw a bunch of his surrogates. These are the always Trumpers, by the way, coming out saying, see, Israel dropped all their tariffs completely, and they're willing to come to the bargaining table. Well, there's nothing left for them to bargain except the U.S. to drop any tariff we have against Israel, and they just put a 17% tariff on Israel.
Right.
And then you get silence.
Right.
And it's like, because that's not what Trump wants.
Right.
Trump wants exactly the same amount of goods and services purchased both ways with every country. That's what he said last night.
Yeah, on the plane, here's a quote. I spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that because, to me, a deficit is a loss.
Right.
We're going to have surpluses, or we're, at worst, going to be breaking even.
Well,
tell me how a nation the size of Canada is going to consume. You're going to have an even trade. Tell me how you have an even trade with these much smaller nations.
You can't. It's impossible.
There's zero way that will ever happen. So two things will happen. Either he sticks to that and the markets continue to crash, or he goes back on that. You know, Ackman was posting on X what we were talking about earlier. He posted on X as well. And he also posted on X that Lutnick's firm benefits. He thinks it's a direct conflict of interest, and it makes sense. Lutnick's firm benefits when the economy crashes. Because his firm is long on fixed income. So if that's the case, if that's accurate and true what Ackman is saying, tell me how that's not a conflict of interest when you have somebody who clearly is a big driver in this. Trump believes a lot of it. But the big drivers there are Lutnick and Navarro.
Oh, right.
There's no way around that. There's no way you can argue that. So,
and did you see where, I mean, the back and forth where Elon Musk said he hasn't built manure.
Yeah.
He didn't say manure. He
said the SH word.
Yes, he has not built manure. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Did Trump at all mention that?
I didn't see that. I didn't see that. But I did see more stories on Sunday. Is Elon Musk out? I don't know. I think he wasn't going to be there long. That was the whole plan. He wasn't going to be there long. But Elon Musk on that is right.
And so if the president would have said, reciprocal, we want to drop all tariffs and we want complete free trade. But that's not what the president wants.
No.
The president wants managed trade where the U.S. always has a surplus or is even with every single country that we trade with.
Right.
He said that last night.
Right.
It's not us making up. That is impossible to do. And I couldn't believe that when I woke up and saw that, I couldn't believe it when it's not going to be a good day tomorrow. And members of Congress, the Republicans, are going to go, this is nuts.
I guarantee you the phone
nuts.
calls have already been made, and the conversation is already going on right now on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Because they know. They know there's a threshold. I don't know if we're at that threshold yet. I don't know what threshold they've measured. But they're getting phone calls from their constituents right now who are eating it.
I will say this. There was some great conversations. By the way, manufacturing has not decreased in the United States.
No, it isn't.
All right. You have had tech and service skyrocket through the roof, but manufacturing keeps going up every single year in this country, unless we get in a recession or COVID or something like that, where you have those temporary dips. But we manufacture more than we did 20 years ago.
Right.
And so it's always going up. It's not going up as fast as tech and service, though.
Right.
But so there was a great discussion saying, well, what do people expect if you bring back manufacturing? I saw a lot of talk on this, which I think is a great discussion to have. I wish we didn't have the stock market go down like this to have this discussion. But it was sort of what we talked about last week. You're not going to have the same assembly lines that you had in the 70s or 80s or even 90s.
No.
It's not going to happen.
No.
It's gone.
No.
Look at a modern U.S. automobile plant. Look at the promotional films from Tesla. You don't see a person.
Right.
It's all high tech, and the people that fix those robots and maintain those robots and create those robots and do the software of those robots are highly educated people.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't, okay, we need to go back, and the blue-collar worker that just got through high school is going to be able to put widget A into slot B.
Right.
That's not happening.
No, because those during I'll call it the Mike Rowe era. When Mike Rowe started talking about, is it better to have college or maybe a trade? Well, you know what? It's not. We can at least agree that it's not a negative to have a trade. But those going into those trades, if you think about it, trades like engineering, electrical, those jobs are different. They're not what they used to be.
No.
And it's not, and I don't know if Mike specifically talked about manufacturing, on the line the way it used to be. In the conversation I had with Mike, he didn't say that, but he may have said it somewhere else. But the point is that those that have chosen to go on and pursue a trade, now we're looking at much different skills than when you and I were doing manufacturing.
Oh, yeah.
Much different, a much different level.
Well, just in the time that I was a machinist, it went from you did everything yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You went from that to NC, which was numerical control, which was the tapes. Remember the little tapes that you would put?
Yeah.
And that would control. I tell you, and then when those didn't work properly, man, it was a nightmare.
Oy.
To then the CNC machines. But in a period of less than 10 years, you went from almost, fully that to NC was around for a while, but it was still, NC was in its infancy compared to what CNC was, and now what you have with AI and everything else on machinery, which what we've seen in 50 years was probably the advancement of technology that we saw in 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't say 10,000 years, 1,000 years in technological improvements. And so if you look at what we need and what manufacturing is going to be, it's going to be highly educated people running robots and running AI
Right.
and the software there on so many jobs.
Right.
And
my wife was at one time on the assembly line for Stanley Tools. My brother was on that same assembly line, and that job has changed. I ran into somebody hadn't seen in a long time, and turns out that when Stanley moved out of the small town that we were in, they moved actually to this area, to the North Texas area.
Yeah, they're about 4 miles from where I live.
The process changed, and a friend of mine who used to live in that small town now lives here and was working there before, and he goes, yeah, the process is completely different than it was in Wichita Falls in that small town. And I don't know anything about that product, so I didn't look into it. But the point is that it's all changing. It's ever changing. The lines where cars are made, those have changed over the years. And getting people back to the, if this is a jobs program, it gets back to the story. If it's a jobs program, well, then we can't allow any AI. By the way, that's where the ports were. Remember the port thing? It was like, no, we can't allow any AI.
And to tell you the quick story of it was a Milton Friedman story where he went over to a socialist country because they just couldn't. It didn't matter whether they tariffed. It didn't matter what they did. The central planners were attempting to run everything that was happening.
Right.
And so they brought him over saying, for this dam project, for example, saying we're not keeping up to schedule. It's not efficient and everything else. And he saw all these people there, with shovels and everything else. And, he said, where are your big earth movers? Where's this? Where's this? Where's this? Where's this? Where's your technology? How come you're not using this? You could do it so much quicker. And he said, well, because they told him, the bureaucrats in the socialist country, because it's a jobs program. He said, well, if it's a jobs program, why don't you use spoons?
Right. Exactly.
Which is a great point.
And then you and I added to that, or forks.
or forks. Well, the thing that's lost about it is that in this entire discussion is we're being told that prices don't matter. And of course, prices matter. That's the other end.
Yes.
That's the other end of it. And the thing that isn't talked about is productivity and efficiency. Productivity is key to the success of an economy, which means you always have to use technology. The United States cannot avoid technology.
Right.
Will be buried economically by other countries that use it.
Well, it's what you and I were saying during that port strike thing. And it's, look, they can make a deal for now. They can all make a deal for now for a few years. But inevitably, the demand that drives that supply chain is going to mean that they're going to have to be more efficient. There's no, you don't really have a choice in that, because it was, in fact, that demand. Remember when all the ports started changing several years ago, because there was a strike out on the West Coast ports. Then they started changing the routes. They went to Texas. They went to Georgia. They went to New York. And then they realized, oh, wait, we should do something different here. We better strike because this is coming. It's the reason they were on strike, because they see the inevitable, and it is inevitable.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Coming up on the top of the hour, a conservative legal group brings a first lawsuit challenging Trump's authority to impose tariffs. This is something that Rand Paul talked about, that Rand Paul believes that what the president's doing is unconstitutional based on the law that the president's actually using. So we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. Plus, what were they protesting? Hands off what? What I heard over the weekend, hands off democracy. Well, where isn't democracy, being, what specifically are you talking about? Elon Musk, well, president, and the oligarchy. Well, yeah, they're they're billionaires, but the president was voted in to office, and he can appoint somebody to be there.
Right.
And anything everything's being challenged in court, so democracy's working.
I was hoping they were going to start protesting EV mandates. I guess that didn't happen.
I don't think you're going to.
Maybe if we wait long enough.
Yeah, it's just it's funny out there. I saw a couple of people on Facebook, and people ask him, "What are you actually protesting?" The oligarchy, which means what? Break that down. You got the billionaires running the government. Then why isn't it a democracy? Why isn't it? Oh, they couldn't explain it. They didn't know.
No,
they couldn't even explain why they're out there protesting.
These dry erase board carrying protesters. What are you protesting? We don't know. What's up there this week?
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Some of the stuff I saw over the weekend. Did you see the graph that was out there saying, look, the drop hasn't been bad in the stock market so far. Look at it to other drops. And the drop over the last couple of days was completely ignored. That was spotted immediately. It was like, no. That cliff is a lot longer than you're putting there over the last couple of days.
Yeah,
The other one was the meme out there. Well, answer this. If tariffs are bad, then why do 170 countries have them? Including the United States, as you know.
Right, yeah.
We have tariffs ourselves. Most tariffs on countries are very low, by the way.
Yeah.
You look at most Western countries, probably their total tariffs are, between, 1% and 3%, something like that, on an average, and just for specific things for most of the countries out there. But I was thinking, is that the way you argue things? Because then I can argue and say no country has a First Amendment like the United States, so we need to to stop having freedom of speech like we have it, because we need to be more like these other countries.
Exactly. Well, or when we look at the approach to tariffs in this case, was once cited as, because we now know the formula. It's about the imbalance, the trade imbalance. But there was also the conversation about, well, they have VAT taxes, all forms of what we consider to be a tariff. Well, wait a minute. A VAT taxes is different. We're against VAT taxes. We wish other nations didn't have them, but I'm not a citizen of another nation. I'm a citizen of the U.S. So I don't want the conversation to start with, because you and I actually said this on the air. We joked, well, does that mean they're going to start introducing the idea of a VAT tax in the year just to make it even? But if you look at that and say, okay, well, it's for all of these reasons based on policies that keep those consumers from buying imported products from the U.S. Well, then you could cite just about anything. NHS over in Europe, in the UK, in Britain. They have to fund it with petrol. They call it petrol over there. That's kind of weird, huh? Petrol taxes. They have fuel taxes. And I remember a friend of mine.
State sales tax. That was brought up over the weekend.
Exactly.
Every state is a sales tax. Sales tax
and
is a tariff.
The British, who are, many of them, a friend of mine who's British, many of them are okay with that. I remember this is several years ago. How's it going at home? Well, it's going great. We're about to impose a new tax, and I'm like, on fuel. Oh, wow, that's horrible. No, it's great. It's going to pay for new things under NHS. And I thought to myself, no, I'm so glad I'm an American. If we want to sit here and compare and use the excuses, well, those other nations, we're not any of those other nations, nor do we want to be. Ever. Stop the comparison. If we want to talk about reciprocal tariffs, you can get the political opinion can change right now. The meter can change if you went tariff per tariff with all the other nations and said it's going to be strictly not on imbalance, nothing else. Tariff per tariff, we're going to match what other countries are doing. Tariff per tariff, and you did that. Politically, you'd probably get people on board. How the market would respond would likely be better than where we are now, but I don't know exactly where that would be. But politically, you could get people on board for that. You're not going to, when you throw the gauntlet down and say, and again, the president said several hours ago on Air Force One, look, I've talked with many foreign leaders, but I told them, we're not going to have an imbalance, a trade imbalance with a deficit with your country. That's not going to happen. And at the very worst, he said, we're going to be even. Well, it's impossible to get those countries don't have economy. Those countries aren't the U.S. It's why so many people from around the world want to come to the U.S. because we have the greatest economy. It's why a lot of companies would love to come to the U.S., whether they can or not is a different question, but would love to set up shop in the U.S. and have access. The Beatles knew this in 1964. You got to make it in the U.S. or you're not making it. It's everybody knows this, and we also know that you're not going to even, again, the reason I keep bringing up Canada is because of their population compared to ours. Do people even know they only have 40 million people? Do people even know the population is much smaller than the U.S.? They got a hell of a lot of land, but their population is smaller. Their productivity is smaller. Their consumption, based on their population, is always going to be much smaller. And you're never going to get to an even situation on trade. So again, one of two things has to happen in that equation. Either the president doesn't get what he wants, or he holds out and we're all in it for the ride, or the medicine, as he's calling it. There's no way around, this crazy train until you go one of those two directions. Well, it has to come to an end. Or the third would be Congress takes action and shuts it down. If that happens, by the way, it's not a good thing. I don't want it to reach a point where the GOP on Capitol Hill believes they need to intervene in this, because once they do, all of Trump's agenda is up in the air. The rest of it is up in the air because I don't know where it goes from there. Because the conservative caucus in the House at that point is going to say, I'm going to serve my constituents. I'm not going to be under the gun of my own constituents like this again. I'm going to fight for what I was elected to fight for. And that's how that's going to play.
You already saw 9 Republicans just on a proxy vote.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Abandon it.
Right.
So, it was tenuous to begin with. But, I remember back in the first Trump administration when it was one of the candy companies decided to move to Mexico. And one of the reasons they said is, because of the tariffs.
Right.
That sugar can be double what it is on the world market because of the trade quotas and tariffs that we put on sugar here in the United States.
Right.
And so why do we do that? We do that to protect the sugar industry.
Right.
And so, when you look at why do 100 and, if tariffs are bad, why do 170 countries have them? Because they want to protect their industry and charge the consumer more for it. But it caused what happened. I forgot which candy company it was, Hershey's or whatever. When they moved to Mexico, it's like, yeah, because of the tariffs.
Oreos move? Didn't Nabisco?
Maybe it was Oreos or whatever. And they said the main thing we use is sugar. Sugar's too expensive in the United States because of the tariffs that are put on it. We need to go to a market where sugar is a lot cheaper. If sugar, that's the ingredient. I mean, that's what we use.
Well, we talked about
one of the reasons they talked about that we have high fructose corn syrup in the United States. One of the reasons it's used is because sugar's so damn expensive, because of the tariffs we put on sugar.
Right.
And so 170 countries have tariffs, because you make it so those countries artificially can make a huge profit, and therefore they're going to donate to your next campaign because you're keeping them much more profitable. But anybody else in the country that uses that particular product, it's more expensive for them. Right. And their economic growth is not what it should be.
Right. And then remember, for a little while, I don't know, it may still be a thing, sodas with real pure cane sugar.
Yeah.
Right. Remember that?
Yeah.
And
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper out of the Dublin Dr. Pepper, which is now, that plant has been absorbed by the parent company. But they were making it with pure cane sugar. But also the Coca-Cola, want to be clear, from Mexico. and that's the thing. And that, a lot of that is in play. Of course, the Dublin Dr. Pepper wasn't. They just wanted to make pure cane Dr. Pepper, and it was kind of hard to find. You had to look around for it here in our area. It was here in our area, actually. But the sugar tariffs we've talked about before over the years. In fact, it's been one of those revolving or recurring, I guess, talk show topics about the sugar tariffs. And you go down the aisle and you have to get into, all right, how much more do groceries cost? Because sugar's in everything. We think about cookies and candy and everything else, but sugar is in so many foods. And now the new trend, the zero sugar trend is in. But it's costing consumers in order to protect the sugar industry. Now, we've priced that in. But how much lower, and I don't have any math before me, but how much lower would it be without the sugar tariffs? And what would it be like? And what would happen to the sugar industry?
In the United States, Americans pay roughly double for sugar compared to other countries, largely due to government policies that restrict imports and domestic production.
Right.
So when candy companies want to move, because remember, we said, well, Trump was furious. Why are you moving? Because all we use is sugar, and it's double here.
Right.
We need to make a profit.
Remember, there was going to be a boycott of the Oreos when that was announced?
Yeah.
By the way, nobody really boycotted Oreos.
I did.
You had to.
I know.
We're talking about your health here.
It wasn't really. It wasn't.
The rest of us don't care about our health.
It wasn't an economic boycott.
No, it wasn't.
So that's the reality of it. But I'll tell you this, and normally I don't make predictions. If the president sticks with what he said last night, which is, by the way, completely different than anything that he has said previous, even though he's complained about it. But if he sticks to the fact that the tariffs stay until every country has the exact same trade, that either we have a trade surplus or it's even with every country, and the tariffs stay until that happens, you will have the Republicans lose the House, and we will lose the presidency in 2028.
Yep.
It's that simple. If that's his benchmark, if that's his line in the sand, and he's not going to move until that, Republicans are doomed for the next decade.
We could easily be getting close to, if the trend continues, on Wall Street. We could be getting close to 30,000 on the Dow before this week is up.
Because now with the president putting that out yesterday, it means obviously he would have to back off and everybody would know it.
Right. Yep.
He'd have to back down after what he said on Air Force One and posted on Truth Social.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about Bill Ackman earlier and what he posted. The Wall Street Journal posted a story as we were talking about that in that segment last hour. A number of CEOs. And keep in mind, Ackman is not somebody who is anti-Trump or has been anti-Trump.
No, in fact, he became one of the biggest Trump supporters over the last couple of years.
Right. And if it's true what he's talking about in terms of Howard Lutnick's firm benefiting in a situation like this, if that's true and accurate, and there's follow-up on that, the media is going to eat that alive. And it'll be a bad look for this administration. We'll see where that goes.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Smart owner-operators make every single week as profitable as possible. One trip is not enough time to be considered profitable or unprofitable, and an entire month may be too much time to manage. 1 week is the right amount of time to deal with efficiently. To do so, look at the advantages and disadvantages of every day of the week. Match trip length to the optimum day of the week. Plan to deliver on the day you have the best opportunity of getting a load. Your personal weekly plan will vary depending on the weekly delivery flow cycle of your region, typical length of haul, personal requirements, and other factors. What's important is to have a specific weekly plan that helps you be successful. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we will get to the first lawsuit filed by a conservative group over the China tariffs, saying that the president doesn't have the emergency power to do it, saying we have had a trade imbalance since the 70s, that the emergency is supposed to be something that is unusual. That's something that comes, and it's like this doesn't cut it because we've had trade imbalances and the country has not viewed it as an emergency. So to sit there and do it, and I don't know where this is going to go in the courts. I really don't want it in the courts. I'd rather have, I'd rather have it go, see where it goes from this point on. I think, and I've always said this before, the American public was never concerned about the debt until the inflation.
Right.
They were never concerned about it. They're still not as concerned as I'd like, but they know it's there. Mm-hmm. They understand where the inflation came from. The Democrats lost it when they tried to say it was greed of the companies. No, it wasn't.
No.
It was loose monetary policy. It was too much money chasing too few goods because the government was borrowing trillions of dollars and just handing it to people.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as we know, the printing of money to buy our own debt to keep the interest rates low.
Right. Yeah.
And so they know it. And so every 50 years, 60 years, we need to find out how economics works.
Yep.
And that's what's happening, right now. And so we're not cherry picking things. We're not cherry picking anything. We're looking at the entire thing of what tariffs do, and we're looking precisely at what the administration is doing. We had told you this for the last couple of years. If Trump would get us elected again and decides to go full bore on tariffs, you're going to hear from us. The argument that you're pro-China, the argument that you're part of the elite, the part of it that, any of the arguments that I've seen this weekend, you can throw out all the insults and everything you want. You can't change economics.
Right.
It's that simple.
It's a numbers game.
And you cannot, as the president wants to do, as he stated last night, have even trade with every country.
Right. That's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Ever.
And if that's his standard, we're in trouble. If he sticks to that standard, we're in trouble. It was never about, he made it clear last night, about countries using unfair tariffs. We found that out Thursday, though.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Meanwhile, a conservative legal organization is suing to prevent Trump's emergency tariffs on Chinese goods, the first attempt to challenge Trump's authority to impose tariffs. The New Civil Liberties Alliance, a law firm that fights federal overreach, filed a complaint on Thursday in Florida federal court on behalf of North Florida paper company Simplified and its owner to stop Trump's 20% tariffs on all Chinese imports under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The president purported to order these tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, but that is a statute that authorizes presidents to order sanctions as a rapid response to international emergencies, a lawsuit asserts. It does not allow the president to impose tariffs on the American people. President Trump's executive orders imposing China tariffs are therefore unconstitutional. The court should enjoin their implementation and enforcement. Trump declared a national emergency. This is from National Review, by the way. Trump declared a national emergency over trade deficits on Wednesday and claimed the power to unilaterally enact sweeping tariffs under the emergency declaration. He had previously declared a national emergency over fentanyl, and this justified his initial 20% tariff on China under that authority. As part of Wednesday's Liberation Day tariff package, Trump added an additional 34% tariff on Chinese goods. China quickly retaliated with a 34% tariff on U.S. imports, fulfilling its promise to fight a trade war against the U.S. if compelled to do so. No other president has used an emergency declaration to enact tariffs, and the IEEPA itself says nothing about tariffs. It does enable the president to take emergency actions against foreign threats to the U.S., including sanctions and asset freezes. But that does not apply to domestic policy. The legal challenge argues that tariffs on China will harm Simplified's business because the paper company relies on Chinese imports for certain materials. The company sells planners, organizational tools, and home management products with the goal of helping women simplify their lives. Simplified will face increased costs because of the tariffs, unless it pays separate costs associated with moving its manufacturing operations to different foreign countries. It will likely have to raise its prices on consumers and can be made to reduce staff due to higher cost and reduce demands for the products. While Congress has the constitutional authority to tax and regulate commerce, certain trade statutes allow the president to create tariffs only under very specific circumstances. The IEEPA does not permit across-the-board tariffs against China, especially because the tariffs do not directly address the stated goal of Trump's emergency declaration, the lawsuit contends. By invoking emergency power to impose an across-the-board tariff on imports from China that the statute does not authorize, Trump has misused that power and usurped Congress's right to control tariffs and upset the Constitution's separation of power. So, interesting. Well, that's the thing, is because of what they say actually matters. I was reading this also from National Review. It says the administration's new tariff policy, which includes a baseline to 10% on all imports and higher rates for countries with which the U.S. has significant trade deficit, is part of a strategy Trump hopes will usher a broader economic realignment and that it will bolster domestic manufacturing. The White House is also hyper-fixated on pressuring countries to lift their non-tariff barriers to trade, such as intellectual property theft, which we're all for, export subsidies, import licensing requirements, and sweatshop labor. The White House has also reportedly circulated talking points to Republican surrogates urging them against describing the new tariffs on imports as a starting point for negotiations with foreign countries. They don't want them to say it's a negotiation. The Washington Post reported on Thursday, telling them to characterize a new policy as a response to a national emergency instead. So there you go. Other high-profile figures in the president's orbit have suggested that countries that should expect relief if they come to the negotiation table. Eric Trump wrote that last week, but the surrogates like Navarro and Lutnick are saying, no, it's not a negotiation. So that's where the confusion comes in. And I know the talk has been out there. You see it all over the place from the president's surrogates on social media saying, this is about the elites, that the stock market doesn't matter whatsoever. And of course it does. And
Yeah,
I think
sure.
Thomas Sowell, my God, the fact that he came out of retirement to say something about it, I said that to you last week. I went, can you believe this? As he said, he goes, it's not about the stock market. It's about nobody wants to invest in anything. Money stops moving.
That's
if
the
money
thing, is
stops moving,
Yeah.
the economy is hurt.
Because those who are on that cash sit on it. You're not going to, right now, cash is king. You're not going to move. You're not going to move. While everybody else is taking that hit, you wait. This is the falling knife, and you're not about to reach out for a falling knife. So we've seen this before. This has happened before, but it is the uncertainty. And, Lutnick over the weekend, many nations are calling us. I didn't, see where he wasn't promoting the fact that, or any idea that would have them at the negotiation table. Then the president on Air Force One Sunday evening. Same thing. Nations are calling us. But the president, again, laid down that gauntlet, and that is, but we're not going to have a deficit with these nations. And I told them that. At worst, we're going to break even, which is never going to happen. Much smaller nations aren't going to be importing the same amount that we import from them. Just isn't going to happen.
Yeah. When I heard that yesterday, when I woke up and heard that, I went, I don't want to check the futures. But I think you'll hear some Republican pushback starting tomorrow on this.
Yeah.
With the House back, because that is something that's impossible. That's impossible to do. If you came out and said, look, and remember, everything changed last Thursday, because before last Thursday, the whole problem was those countries that are putting tariffs on us, and we need to have reciprocal tariffs. What happened last Thursday had nothing to do with reciprocal tariffs.
New York Post. Here's the New York Post line on Lutnick. He was on Face the Nation on Sunday. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said on CBS's Face the Nation Sunday morning that about 50 countries have reached out to discuss the sweeping tariffs, but the U.S. would not postpone any measures taken at this point. And you heard it from Leavitt last week. This is not a negotiation. The president keeps talking about talking with other nations. But again, as of Sunday evening on Air Force One, We're not going to do anything. At the very least, it will be a zero-sum game on trade deficits. Well, there's no such thing. It can't happen that way with much smaller nations.
Well, it can't happen in general.
Well,
because then
depends on what it all depends on what his definition of trade surplus is and where that balance would be. Where's that standard?
Yeah. You cannot get there. It's impossible. What the president said last night is impossible to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot happen.
Right.
And so you've now got a market that's down 1,300 points in the futures. And if the president sticks with this, and this is his red line, you're not going to get anywhere.
No.
Because even in past trade wars, no one, not even the United States, demanded this in 1930s with Smoot-Hawley.
Right.
That helped kept us in that depression for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But what did we have during the Depression? Mm-hmm. Trade surpluses.
Well, it seemed to work.
Yeah. You can have a trade surplus. Your economy's going to suck.
Who needs a great economy? We're winning, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I said, when questioned over the weekend, and I could tell that a lot of our listeners are confused. They don't know where he's going on it. I mean, every day something new, changes. The goal is something different, and that's exactly what you don't want. And when the president himself said a number of times, we need clarity, we need specific and targeted and precise tariffs for those that are doing unfair tariffs with us, and they did nothing on unfair tariffs. They simply looked at trade imbalances last week. That was it.
Right.
And then he doubled down on it last night. And I just went, oh, no. Oh, no. This isn't going to help. You should have golfed an extra day.
And,
And he's cornered himself.
Well, that's it. You either have to go back on what you said, or you have to keep everything in place, which is going to further destroy the markets.
Yeah. Politically, he cornered himself.
Yep.
He's saying, until I get even trade with every single country, they stay.
Yeah, that's what he calls, that's the worst case scenario would be even.
Right.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Or worst case, even.
Well,
you're not going to get there. It's not going to happen.
Well, you can't do that in your life with the people that you trade with and buy stuff with, and it's never going to happen on an international level. It is impossible to do that.
Right.
The Wall Street Journal said every country should come back and say, we will drop our tariffs completely if you drop yours, and call the president on it, because
the editorial board, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they say in their piece on that, look, we know it's a long shot. Well, I think it's an impossible shot, actually. They're not going to, all the other trade nations aren't going to go to zero. But if they did, they're spelling out what would happen. Because I don't have any confidence they're going to go to zero. I think, actually, they're going to continue to lay their own gauntlets down, and it's going to stay that way. Because they see the political pain. Keep in mind, these are liberal-led countries. They want to see the political demise of Donald Trump. They don't care if the U.S. economy suffers. Yeah, their economy is going to suffer too. But they know the political damage is being done by the second to Donald Trump if he doesn't turn this around.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. The protest over the weekend, hands off, which was actually humorous.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, hands off what? Democracy. Well, what does that mean? Nobody can explain it.
Fascism. Racist. Hitler.
What did I see? Oh, what did I see the other day? You made me think about something else. I go, okay, that replaces Hitler.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a person who committed a genocide. It was something else. I can't remember what it was. It was like, oh, man.
Well, Tesla's a dirty word now. So, yeah.
Tesla, Tesla. Yeah. You're a Tesla Nazi, like the soup Nazi, huh?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's just gone over the top insane. And
then I saw the president endorse the Senate deal, the 10-year deal, which really doesn't have any cuts. And Chip Roy was already screaming about that.
Right.
So it's like, okay, are we going to do any of these cuts? Is Doge just going to slowly slink away?
Right.
Or the publicity of it from the White House? Because now, okay, if there's going to be nothing in the Senate bill,
well, especially with
how
the
do you get
back
anything
and
through the
forth,
House?
that Elon Musk going after Navarro, over the weekend. Yeah, it may be done. The next thing we hear after Elon's done with his short-term employee status thing may be the report in July of next year. Because we've been asking after the CR back and forth, if conservatives were told, okay, wait until we get further down the road and you can fight for your cuts then. We said, all right, great. Let's see that happen. Well, if you can't get the win, if you don't have the votes, I don't know where it goes.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. One of the things that is talked about all the time is the fact that the manufacturing base of the United States has been decimated, right?
Right.
Well, we produce more manufactured goods than we did 20 years ago. Employment has cratered.
Yeah.
Just like I just did some research here, and it all depends whether you're talking farms or agriculture and food sector across the board, because agriculture, okay, I import into a grocery store and I work at the grocery store. Well, technically, are you part of retail or you're part of agriculture? But if you look at it totally, roughly, if you go back to 1790, 90% plus worked in agriculture. 90% of the workforce in America worked in agriculture/food. Now, agriculture, food sectors, which again can be much more expansive than just agriculture, 10%. And you could see it go down in that in the century of the 1800s, it went from 90%. By the time you got to 1871, it was down to 31%. That's how quickly the Industrial Revolution changed everything. Yet we constantly produce more food. Why? Technology. And the same thing today. And so that's what you're talking about. What you're talking about, not that you have lost a manufacturing base. It's that it's a smaller part of the GDP than it's ever been before because service sector, tech, whatever, has just skyrocketed. Why? Right. Because we have, I don't know, compared to 150 years ago, how many more products do we have? I'm just looking around right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just looking right in front of me here. Products that weren't around, that long. Oh, well, 8, 9, 10.
I don't know what you're looking at.
11.
I'm over here eating my sorghum sandwich from the feed store.
I mean, there's tens of possibly hundreds. When you think of the widgets that go into everything, manufacturing, computers, and all that, millions of more products now that existed because of technology that didn't exist before.
Sure.
And so it's not that we manufacture less. We don't have that same growth rate in manufacturing that you saw in the 1800s and 1900s, which skyrocketed to a point where then, okay, a machine can do that job. A computer can do that job. A robot can do that job. Somebody's still got to build the robots. There's millions of parts in those robots that are more high-tech jobs. But when you see, there are some people that are absolutely clueless. We need to get back to the factories that we had in the 1950s and 1960s where people worked on the... It's not happening.
No, that's not happening. Look, I understand that, we want to go back to the old ways. Well, we actually shouldn't want that. You mentioned robots. Even older robots like Mitt Romney need maintenance. They still need parts.
Yeah, they do.
They have to be made somewhere.
By the way, and I don't care what anybody says, everything breaks.
Yeah. In fact,
hopefully
pretty
less.
much everything I own eventually.
Hopefully less often. Yeah, hopefully I brought my car in last week. It really didn't need anything. My old car with 251,000 miles, and it turns 22 years old next month. I'm bringing in my other vehicle tomorrow just in case it needs any parts. They're probably in inventory now and haven't been tariffed.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talk about is, bringing back all this manufacturing base here. Elisa Finley, Wall Street Journal. A good man for U.S. manufacturing is hard to find. American factories are already having an extremely difficult time filling jobs, and not because of trade policy. It said President Trump proclaims his tariffs will bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. Good luck finding workers to fill them. A common lament among employers, especially manufacturers, is they cannot find reliable, conscientious workers who can pass a drug test.
Yeah, that goes beyond the stuff you and I have been talking about in terms of a shortage of workers in this field, being the low birth rate and everything else, and that it's been a generational thing where we've gotten away from these jobs. This has to do with the people who might otherwise be able to do the job but can't pass a drug test. And the thing, too, is that you better be able to pass a drug test. They're not going to put you on that line if you don't for safety reasons. That's a liability on their company they're not about to take.
Blame government that showers benefits on able-bodied people who don't work while at the same time subsidizing college degrees that don't lead to productive employment.
Yep.
The result is millions of idle men, and that's because more men work in manufacturing than women, and have been, millions of unfulfilled jobs, what an economist would call a deadweight loss to society. 40% of small business owners in March reported job openings they could not fill, with larger shares of construction, 56%, transportation, 53%, and manufacturing, 47%, according to last week's National Federation of Independent Business survey. The Labor Department's Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey of Businesses tells a similar story. There are twice as many job openings in manufacturing than in the mid-2000s as a share of employment. Again, there are twice as many job openings in manufacturing than in the mid-2000s as a share of employment. Save for during the pandemic, America's worker shortage in manufacturing is the worst in 50 years. Decades ago, productivity-enhancing technology and, yes, inexpensive imports caused men who worked on shop floors to lose their job and drop out of the workforce. But this generation is sailing into the sunset, and there are many fewer young Americans who actually want to work in factories. The labor force participation rate among working-age men is now about 5 percentage points lower than in the early 1980s. As a result, there are about 3.5 million fewer men between the ages of 25 and 54 in the workforce, and 1.3 million between the ages of 25 and 34 than there would have been if it were not for this decline. Labor participation of working-age women, on the other hand, recently hit a record, in part because they're having fewer children, which is related to their difficulties in finding suitable mates.
Mm-hmm.
At the risk of stereotyping, women are more inclined towards helping professions such as services than those that require physical labor. I mean, that's just the natural flow, as we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So where have all the good working men gone? Some are subsisting on government benefits or living off their parents.
Mm-hmm.
About 17% of working-age men are on Medicaid, 7.4% on food stamps, 6.3% on Social Security, claiming disability payments. According to the Census Bureau, many spend their days playing video games and day trading. Friends say they've seen young men on dating apps claim to be working as self-employed traders, financial bloggers, or even a retired financial engineer, apparent euphemisms for Robin Hood bros who speculate on stocks and share tips on social media. When stocks were booming, many didn't have to work in the traditional sense. After last week's plunge, they might. Only missing men are taking longer to finish college or are pursuing graduate degrees. Only about 41% of men complete a bachelor's degree in 4 years, and about a quarter take more than 6. Many high-paying vocations don't require college degrees, but government subsidies and public K-12 schools nonetheless steer high school students to that track. Federal student loans will not pay for apprenticeships, but they will cover the cost, including living expenses, of worthless graduate degrees in community organizing, creative writing, tourism, dance, and more. Rarely does anyone need an advanced degree to enter such fields, but colleges have convinced Americans that they do as a means of raking in more federal dollars. Many millennials and Gen Z Zoomers struggle to find jobs in their chosen field of studies and don't want to work in others or in jobs they view beneath them, or some simply don't want to work. The unemployment rate among recent college grads with a sociology degree is 6.7%. Their median income, $45,000. Sociology grads could earn twice as much working on an auto assembly line, which pays an average of $100,000 a year. Good gig, but many don't want it. Remember, an auto assembly line is completely different than an auto assembly line when I was growing up. Completely different. It means you know how to run robots. That's what it means. By the way, when they say trade, as you said before, you want to trade apprenticeships, that takes more brain power than most of these useless college degrees do.
Oh, no, I think actually,
yeah.
yes. I think that's a solid point. I would love to see the measurement on that, because I think many of the college degrees that, especially the ones that don't apply, you get a degree, you get you major in the arts, and then go over to the trade school and look at a diesel mechanic.
Yeah.
Look at electricians. Look at a number of fields where you better know what you're doing.
Yeah, they actually have degrees. The degrees are just different.
Right.
But there's this whole thing. There's this a stereotype in our society to look at people who actually work with their hands, even though it takes a tremendous amount of critical thinking skills to do so, way more than a useless degree, but they're viewed as not highly educated. That's the biggest line of BS that we throw out here in our society.
Right.
You just said it. A diesel mechanic, even an auto mechanic today, what they have to do in the training that they constantly have to update, on. I mean, cars have completely changed. I mean, granted, you still have brakes and you still have, but you've got, as we know, you got computers, you got AI, you got a ton of stuff that these people have to know when they work in that profession.
And with every advancement in that technology and the computers on board those cars, it requires, as you mentioned, more and more training. You if you're going to be ASE certified, if you're going to be in any bay and make a living doing that, you better know what you're doing, and you better keep up with the education.
But this thing is, and I think, and again, I've seen it out there, this imagery that we can get back to the 60s where people just, take widget A and connect it to widget B. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be able to have successful. If we just tariff the right people, then we can bring those jobs. Well, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's not happening.
Not going to happen.
And so you need highly educated people to do that, which means you can't be handing out the government benefits you're handing out because you create a pathology of dependency. End of story.
Right.
You have to, if people don't want to work, they have to be forced to work, which means they go hungry.
Right.
Like, Mom and Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Dad probably still says it occasionally. When I was growing up, you didn't work, you don't eat.
Right.
My boy. The Greatest Generation, that was one of the, I heard that so much when I was growing up. You don't work, you don't eat.
Well, they didn't have credit. They didn't use credit.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, they didn't.
It was all on the work. You got paid, and that money you used to survive on. Yeah. And for ages now, for a couple of generations, there's been this increase in, well, look at the subprime mortgage thing. There had people that walked into homes they couldn't afford with zero down. A number of them never made a payment on that home. And then when it was over, they just walked away. Well, that's not how the world works. But we've had this kind of society for far too long. And you're not going to, all of a sudden, you're going to have people in line for jobs. You've got already before the tariff situation, you've got jobs that haven't been filled. I said this
almost half the jobs they couldn't fill that open in manufacturing.
I said that the hours after the Hyundai steel plant was announced and that presser was there. That's great. Thousands of jobs. Who's going to fill them?
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Let's head to you. We go to Greg in Chicago. Greg, you're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. You're on the air.
There's a bigger problem. Hi. I think there's a bigger problem here, and I think the problem is what Eric described. You have a bunch of people in this country that just don't want to work. They don't want to work. And it's because of laziness. It's because of society pushing down on them, paying them, giving them all sorts of benefits. We've done a couple things in this country that have basically destroyed the labor base in this country. One is we've basically given everybody the idea that something is out there and it's there for free, that they don't have to work for it. That's one. And two, our school systems have destroyed the whole system of the trade school idea. They've demeaned blue-collar work. They've looked down on people that have to hustle and sweat when they work during the day, kind of like the Mike Rowe thing. Mm-hmm. And to a greater point where the point was brought up about women looking for the ideal mate, that may be true. And that, in general, that's a common sense statement, but when you have an educational system that basically puts you in a financial hole immediately when you get out of college, that's a big problem because you have to pay back your debt. You want a house. You want a family. You want this. You want that. We have a very, very, very poisoned mindset in this country on what it means to work. And I would argue that even though we have people that can't work on the labor line because they can't pass the drug test, that's a damning statement about the people that we have in this country that just don't want to do anything. We do have to bring manufacturing back here. In some cases, I believe that. And with automation, it's far less of the widget or the I Love Lucy thing about putting cakes in a box.
I know the episode. That's why I'm laughing.
The chocolates and coming off too fast. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem here is the one that Eric you described and Gary described. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants that job that'll bridge them to something better. Nobody wants that job that you have to start at the low end and work up to. They want everything now. And that's the parasitic mindset that we have in this country. And that's the danger.
Well, one of the dangers is people upset that they have to work 35 hours a week or 5 days a week.
Right.
When I was a steel worker, for God's sakes, in my 20s, my mid 20s, when they gave us 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, we worked them.
My gosh,
we were the happiest people you could ever
we
find.
Loved overtime.
We couldn't believe the opportunity that we were given to make that kind of money. So even back then, if you were willing to work hard, you could get in without a lot of training because they would train you.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, they would. They would train you. You didn't necessarily need to go to trade school even back then. Now it's more complicated now. But you and I did a couple of stories going back about 10 years ago, where there were manufacturers that couldn't find anybody to work. They couldn't. Right. And so what they did was they actually set up with local community college. The companies went to the local community college.
Yep.
This doesn't take a long time to do.
Right.
And they went to the college and said, we want to do an apprenticeship.
Right.
They still couldn't find people.
Remember,
it was like 10 years ago?
Yep.
They were paying them to go to school, work part-time, and then they would work full-time when they were done or increase the hours, and they were starting them like 80,000. Remember that?
And people
60,000, 70, 80,000. They wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I did hear a lot of talk about what's the end game. And I think the president set down the end game yesterday until every country we have even we've even twayed with.
Be bowie, quiet.
I taught a twading war. And that's impossible to do. And when I woke up, and I woke up to that last night, I just shook my head going, oh God, I don't want to look at the future numbers, which started at 8 p.m. And I woke up like
scary?
about 9, and it was already down over 1,000. I'm like, oh man.
You know, it was scary.
What?
I woke up late Saturday night into Sunday morning. I don't know. Between 4 and 6 a.m., I forget. But it's somewhere in that time. And when you click over to Dow Futures, they kind of default going back to Friday. And it had like down 2,300. And I thought, oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. Okay. And then I was like, oh, no. It's too early.
Right.
The futures won't be up until later. And then I saw, before they came up, later in the day, I saw unchanged. And I thought, no, they're not. And then it was like, okay, we haven't hit the Dow Futures yet. And when the Dow Futures hit, you and I have been watching it. The point being, there's only so far you can let this go. The president may let it go for a while. He keeps calling this the medicine we have to take in order to heal from all the damage in years past. That's his position. If you're a Republican in the House, there's only so much you can take here. Ted Cruz over in the Senate last week was posting about, all right, if this is a short-term game, then the markets can basically come back. But it can't be a long-term game. That was the sentiment that he put across, which tells you where a number of conservatives likely are in the House and Senate. The point being, They know they can't let this thing go on. But here's the problem. They also know that the GOP, who's been fully on board, much more so than the first term, fully on board for Trump on pretty much everything else. Once they draw that line in the sand and take that action, it's Lord of the Flies with the GOP, because you're just going to have the breakout of everything. You're going to have the conservative caucus over in the House say, look, we're going to have to stick to what our constituents want. And if it means we disagree with the president, we're just going to have to fight for what our people in our district want. In the Senate, the same thing. We're going to have to fight for our political future because President Trump is never going to run again unless they get that third term thing worked out. He's not going to be on the ballot again. So at that point, the MAGA movement comes to a screeching halt. And that's going to be quite unfortunate. The best case scenario, if this is going to be turned around, is that Trump comes in and says, all right, we didn't get everything we wanted, but we're going to, and by the way, as of right now, I don't see that happening. I don't see him
like he did with USMCA,
right?
Because he got away with it.
Yeah.
With USMCA, I mean, it was basically NAFTA, and he said it's the best trade deal. We got rid of NAFTA, and you and I and anybody else who actually read and paid attention to what the differences between NAFTA and USMCA went. He hardly changed anything,
right?
But all the surrogates went along with it. They were like, "Oh, greatest thing ever!" And we're like, we said it on the air. We're like, okay, fine, let's move on.
Well, right.
Now,
you can take your victory lap and we can call it a day, and that's,
exactly.
And it's not much has changed, so the economy's not going to change much. And, okay, in this case, the move would have to be substantial because the throwdown was substantial to begin with last Wednesday. The pullback would have to be substantial. Well, a substantial pullback like that would have him conceding. It would also mean you're moving on from Navarro and Lutnick. And as of right now, I wouldn't put $1 on that bet. There's no way. I don't see that happening. I think we're in this at least for the week. The question is, what do the markets say about that? Because everything that's said, I think the pullback on the downside on the futures earlier, where the futures, it improved a little bit for, I don't know, an hour or two. I think it was trying to decipher what he meant. Or was there some hope? It could be, by the way, just buying opportunity. It could be that simple. But it also could be the market's going, wait a minute, he and Lutnick talked about talking with other nations. Is that a positive sign? And now we're back in the territory of, wow, 1681 on the downside on the Dow right now on Dow futures. So, again, what happens by the end of the week?
Which, really matches what we had on day one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're right where we were on day one. So,
and like on Friday, it really started to take a dive toward the end of the trade day.
Oh, I was checking all day, and when it got to 2:15, I'm like, okay, it's moving in the right direction, and 2:30 still moving in the right direction. 20-3, which is 20-4 Eastern time, is when it started moving. I went, all right, I can't look at this, and then it went down another 400 points.
Right.
And just
oil now at just about $59 a barrel. And so that indicates in the oil market that they believe that's more about whether we're in a recession and people will be using less, there will be less demand. That's where the oil markets are, but also on the tariffs. But the big driver, I think, on oil right now is the great concern over the recession. And here's the perfect storm brewing. You and I don't believe that in the first quarter, if we're looking at what the GDP now forecast is, let's say it's a negative. Let's just say it's a negative 1.5, 1.8 for the first quarter. You and I don't believe that falls on Trump in the first quarter.
I don't think it's a result of the tariffs that he put on.
Right.
It might be a result of the manufacturers back in November, December, believing the president would do something drastically.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Drastically increasing inventories, and even in even through January, and then in the first quarter saying, well, we're overstocked on inventory, and so we're not going to be buying.
Right.
That might be a possibility, but the actual tariffs that he put on, I don't see as the major reason if we're in. But it doesn't matter what I think.
It doesn't matter what you and I think.
The public will think.
The public going. Exactly.
The public will.
The public will. That's the problem, because you couple that with the first quarter. If there's no improvement of the second quarter, we don't see if we're not above water in the second quarter, or even if it's slower growth, and it's down, it's above water, but it's not much above water. You're going to, again, this is going to be a problem, because it doesn't matter. Perception is reality. You can talk about everything of how business planning works. We talked about that last week, and you can talk about anything you want, but the public right now is looking for lower prices. This is what they want. The way they'll phrase it is, I want inflation gone. Well, inflation isn't going to go away. Best case scenario, 2% inflation per year. That's the goal. And they're not to that yet, but 2% is the goal, which means everything on the average is going to go up by 2% from here, and it's compounding. But that's not what they're actually saying is, I want prices to come down. The big thing on eggs. Last Wednesday, the president recognized, before he started, the ag secretary was sitting before him, apparently, and he told her, congratulations on getting those egg prices down. We're going to do even better. Well, how did they get them down?
Imported eggs.
Imported eggs, which will be tariffed. So he was about to announce how he was actually going to increase the cost of those same eggs that helped to bring the prices down in the first place.
Like I said, there's no consistency of any message at all, and everybody just cherry picks what they like, and then that becomes the comment on social media and from Trump surrogates. We like this one. Yeah, but you're not looking at the entire picture here.
Right.
And the entire picture is, and it's all changed. It's all changed since yesterday. When the president, now it all changed on Wednesday, but then people are still wondering, what did the president mean? But when he said yesterday, this is about every country, he said, we need to have even Steven trade.
Right.
That you must buy as much from us as we buy from you. That's never going to happen. And he put himself into a corner that he can't get out without major compromising, without obviously compromising big time. And this is a president that doesn't like to do that. He got away with it, as I said, with USMCA, where he said, we got the best deal ever. And everybody just chuckled going, no, it's basically the same thing. Best ever, but we got rid of that horrible NAFTA. We got USMCA, and now USMCA is the worst trade deal ever. Well, people look at that and say, you did the deal alone. You did it. You and your trade representatives. Congress had no say in it. They passed it, but it was exactly what you created. And now you're saying it sucks.
Yep.
And so when he came on and said, you need to, people, and as surrogates, you need to trust the president. And I asked the question, why? Last time I didn't get what he said he wanted, because he's telling me now he didn't get what he wanted.
Right.
So what? Was he lying to me then? Is he clueless? What is it? And if you ask those questions, of course, you're an elitist who was controlled by China. That's their response, which is childish, and we all know it.
I'm controlled by Greenland, to be clear.
I'm controlled by Iceland.
That again, our opinion
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Economics
doesn't
matters.
Factor into anything.
Yeah, economics matters. That's all that matters here. That's what you're seeing. And the indecision matters. And the people sitting on money matters. And that's when, because I've seen this, the Trump loyalists, I'll call them, the always Trumpers. Mm-hmm. I saw one guy, financial planner from St. Petersburg, Florida, Nobody gives an S about the S&P. Nobody gives a S about the stock market. 42% of Americans aren't in the stock market. They don't care. It doesn't affect them at all. And this guy's a financial planner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what his title was. I'm like,
yeah,
probably not a good one.
Right.
If you can't figure out
right.
how the stock market and what's happening now means people aren't moving money.
Right.
Which means nobody's taking a chance of money that creates the jobs.
Right.
The capital that creates the jobs.
Right.
You're clueless.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, only the elites care because they've got the fat cat 401ks. Well, I've never, ever changed my mind about tariffs since I was in college and learned about capitalism versus socialism.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a free trader. I understand that, yep, if somebody is involved in unfair trading practices, as was first promoted by this administration, especially China, stealing intellectual property, things like that. Yeah, go after them. Unite the world around them. Get your free trading partners, the Western world, and isolate them. Instead, I hope the opposite doesn't happen, where the United States becomes the isolated country.
So the question is, where is that victory lap on this for the president? Where's that line? Because something has to change. And I really hope and pray it's not the GOP on Capitol Hill getting involved to make that happen.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Gavin Newsom asked foreign trading partners to exempt California from retaliatory tariffs.
I saw that. Yeah, good luck with that.
Did you see over the weekend there was a thing? What do you call it when you go back in time collage of Gavin Newsom talking about high-speed rail?
Yeah.
It was like goes back to 2008.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, oh, my gosh. It's like, stop it.
Yeah.
Talking about the high-speed rail. Some say it's, a train to nowhere, but it doesn't mean that just because it's over budget, just because it's taken us 15 years, doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do.
Right. Because we're wasting money doesn't mean we're wasting money.
Oh, my God. And I'm reading this here, this headline. Now that the book deals can be made, the story of the Bidens can be told.
Exactly what we've been saying, right? That's funny.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. For what?
It is time for our Democrats stink category.
Okay.
Excuse me. Update.
All
Democrats, not category. Mm-hmm. Democrats stink update.
All right.
From the Washington Examiner. Longtime New York Congressman Jerry Nadler has become famous as a champion of progressive policies in the House of Representatives. But among his colleagues in the chamber, both Democrat and Republican, he has also earned the dubious distinction of being the smelliest member of Congress. Said Anthony D'Esposito, a former GOP congressman from Long Island, recently named Inspector General of the Department of Labor. He's the kind of guy who, when he makes his way onto the floor, he barrels through everyone, and sometimes he doesn't really need to barrel through because his stench kind of clears the way, and it equates to his personality, which is nasty, and most people want to keep away from him. Oh, my God.
Well, that's unfortunate.
A half dozen Nadler's current and former colleagues on both sides of the aisle were even more savage behind the scenes,
Wow.
poo-pooing the New York
Wow.
liberal. One House Democrat said he wasn't just rancid, but frequently out of it. Because members of Congress don't want to sit next to him because of it, the House Democrat told the Washington Free Beacon. Yeah, he smells. I don't know what he does. Maybe he doesn't take a bath. I don't know what it is. Wow. They removed him from his chairmanship because they don't trust his ability to handle the job. He's constantly falling asleep on the floor and constantly falling asleep everywhere. Nadler was ousted as a top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee in December among mounting concerns that he was no longer up to the job. In 2019, then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sidelined him during President Donald Trump's first impeachment hearing over similar cognitive concerns. Videos of him napping had become commonplace online. So there you go.
Well. But you do the numbers, there has to be at least one.
Yeah, you're right. It's
as long as he doesn't,
I worked in two different stations with two people who obviously didn't take a bath often, but obviously wore the same clothes for days in a row.
Yeah.
They didn't launder their clothes, and I mean stinko to the 10th power.
Well,
And it was whoa.
Yeah.
One guy had his own office.
Oh.
And he also this goes back a while. He had his own office and he smoked in that office.
Oh.
So there was a combination of
Yeah.
I'll just say this. It's why I related to the Seinfeld B.O. episode.
Right.
It's the Beast.
And there's really no way around it.
No, I told him. And he was sort of my boss. And I told him, I said, you got to wash. You got to wash your clothes. You stink.
Yeah.
I told him. I said, and the other one, I didn't. His boss, the other one, the boss did. One time, it's a true story. People were in the front office where you hung up. There was a little closet to hang up your clothes.
Mm-hmm.
My God, what is that stinking smell? And it was his long winter jacket.
No!
That his cat had peed on, and he didn't wash it for like a week and brought it in, wore it to work that day.
Okay.
Yeah. So twice I've had a. Well, not just me. Everybody had to deal with it.
Yeah, because this is the time of year. Actually, it could be year-round, depending on the project. I'm taking 2 showers a day because I have to. Yesterday, it's funny because my wife, she knew. Her instinct was like right on. Sunday morning, she was saying, I'm looking at the temperatures for today. There's no way we get away and not have a frost tomorrow. And she's got these young tomato plants in the ground now, right, on the west side of the house. And I said, well, I'll watch it throughout the day. Sure enough, frost advisory comes across a few hours later. I said, I'm on it. So I get out there and I'm working, and I'm only out there maybe 30 minutes. I've been working on an irrigation project back there last week, 2 or 3 days in a row. It was hours a day, at least an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. Well, You can't work and then not, for me, sorry, everything stops. Even just yesterday, 30 minutes, and it was kind of cold outside. It was, 40-something.
Oh, it was freezing out.
But I'm sweating. I sweat at 32 below. If I'm working, I'm sweating. Well, everything goes in the wash. I get in the shower. There's no way around that. I can't do the thing like a lot of people will go, in fact, I showered around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I woke up. I showered again.
Now,
a lot of people will say, well, I showered earlier, and it's like, no.
This isn't virtue showering then.
No. No, it's because I stink.
I just came up with that. I like that. Virtue showering.
Well, it's because I don't want to stink.
Okay. Okay, you're proactive, not stinking.
Right. You got to be clean. Be clean. Oh, my grandson, my poor grandson. And I told him I wouldn't tell anybody. But, of course, I'm going to. I'm going to tell everybody. Now, he took his shoes off, and he's got these new leather shoes, and they don't breathe at all. And it was like, okay, time to learn a lesson.
Oh.
He took the shoes off, and he's so sweet. It's so adorable. He just turned 6 last week. I said, number 8, come on. I got to show you something that I learned a long time ago. And then he was like, yeah. And then after that, we went and he taught him about that and then taking care of the shoes, letting the shoes breathe, maybe spraying them, whatever, burning them if necessary, whatever it takes. And then, he washed his feet and the whole thing. And he goes, I feel better after washing my feet. I said, yeah. I said, don't worry. This isn't on you. It's on the shoes, but you got to be careful of those shoes that don't have the mesh on them. He's like, oh, no, I totally understand. I said, they won't breathe. So you got to, and I mean, that's a thing. Any parent knows if the moment your kids start doing any exercise whatsoever, right? It's like you got to, can you imagine? But I don't think I'm trying to think here. If I worked with someone to the point that their problem was to the point I had to tell them. I was in retail at one time, which was my second job. I was still working radio, but I was doing retail. And we had this kid that came in, and I felt really bad for him. And he was a teenager. And his clothes were so bad, I thought he was homeless. And so he came in, he just kind of looked around. He didn't really bother anybody, didn't really talk to anybody. Nobody came in with him. No adults were ever with him. So one day he was in the store and it was just me and him. And I said, hey, are you in need of help? Is there anything I can do to help you? And he said, no. And I said, well, where do you live? Do you live close by? You come by often? He said, yeah. I said, you might want to get some new clothes if you can. If you need help, let me know. I mean, I felt so bad for this kid. And he looked at me, and it's just to this day, it's a heartbreaking look. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'll tell my mom. I think so, too. And it was 3 days later, a Saturday, he comes in, brand new clothes and the whole thing. But, I mean, that situation wasn't that, oh, man, this kid stinks. I want him out of my store. It was, man, there's something going on here. Something else going on.
Yeah, I was dealing with adults.
Yeah, exactly.
Who had the money to take a shower and buy clothes.
Yeah. So. And I don't think I've ever been in that situation where I was, working with somebody and they just didn't have the mindset, the wherewithal to take a bath.
Twice. I mean, it was bad. I mean, it was like Pigpen. I mean, how the dirt floated behind him.
Yeah.
It's like you knew when he walked down the hallway.
Now, we're in radio. We work with a lot of smokers. There are people who, smoke, so they come in from outside and, they kind of carry that with them.
Oh, yeah.
They smell like smoke. But
I told you that one guy, he no longer with us. This goes back, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, over 20 years ago. And he, famous guy, not Rush, want to make sure, but no longer with us. But he smoked, and you could he came in one time. I can't remember. He came into my studio, and you remember I told you the old studio that we had when we were in Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
That was not the studio that you were broadcasting from, the closet, but the studio when I was doing my local show.
Actually, this is the closet. Studio C was actually pretty.
You're right.
Pretty resourceful.
Studio C was bigger than this one.
Oh yeah, it was twice this size at least.
But he was sitting like 10 feet from me, and when he walked in, I mean, it was like he smoked. He chain smoked though, chain smoked, and you could smell him. You knew if he was. And he'd smoked outside, or remember in the stairwell, everybody would smoke in the stairwell, and it was illegal to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, remember the notes being put up? Do not smoke in the stairwell.
Well, the fire marshal came in
and smelled it. Is that what happened?
Yeah,
really?
And it's an immediate fine if they find somebody smoking in there.
Yeah, well, you could smell the smoke. You open that door, it was like whoa. But this guy was like Pigpen the Smoker from.
Yeah.
So that was. But that was just cigarette. Like I said, the other guy was both.
Right.
Cigarette smell and
Now, I have worked with people who insist on eating the most garlic.
Oh, yeah.
And balsamic vinegar.
Oh.
Yeah. They said on the set of what was the Peter Pan movie with Dustin Hoffman? He played Hook. Was it Hook? It's called Hook. There you go. I knew it'd come to me. On the set, every morning he ate raw onions and garlic. He said it was for his immune system. Yeah, they said it was a task. It was a bit of a task.
Yeah, when you work in radio studios too, I mean, because we're.
Right.
They're pretty confined and they're pretty airtight with the door, just to be soundproof with the door, the big doors and everything else.
Well, that's why everybody likes
a lot of circulation.
That's why everybody on our crew likes me. I smell mostly like donuts and cookies.
Ah. Okay. Hey, who needs one of the scented candles when Eric walks in?
Exactly.
Yes.
That's right. You smell nice. It's the donuts.
It's cookie dough Eric.
That's right. It was shower number 2 and donuts.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Once a roadside inspection is completed, the officer will close it out, which involves the officer writing or typing up the report. The more the officer found during the inspection, the longer this will take. If violations were discovered, most officers, as a courtesy, will explain the violations to the driver. If there were any out-of-service violations, the officer will normally explain what must be done to get the out-of-service order lifted. Drivers need to be very attentive during this part of the inspection. The driver also needs to read and understand the complete inspection report. After receiving the inspection report, the driver has 24 hours to get the roadside inspection report to the motor carrier. If the driver will not be returning to a company facility within the next 24 hours, the driver needs to know to get it on the way to you via email, mail, or fax within 24 hours. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, quickly to CNN and all the books being written. And I go back to this headline. Now the book deals can be made. Now that book deals can be made and money can be made, the story can be told about Biden and everything that was going on. But all the books on Biden's mental decline, on Tim Walz, on Harris. You saw where Harris couldn't believe that she lost.
Yeah.
We'll get to that here in just a moment. Yeah. But here's Scott Jennings on CNN the other night.
These books, first of all, seeing that video of Kamala Harris and then these videos of Tim Walz the last few days, man, did we dodge a bullet. Lord have mercy. These books coming out.
Walking into the fire right now,
These books coming out. It can all be told now. mean, I sat here all during the campaign and was assured Joe Biden was fine. Kamala Harris had the most organic, grassroots-driven campaign. The Democrats were unified. We had a campaign of joy. And everything was hunky-dory. That's what I was told night after night after night. And now all the books are coming out, and it's amazing because a lot of the people who were telling those lies are now going to get paid to write those books.
I think a lot of
it's
people,
crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that betrayal, being lied to their face about Biden's health, about the strength of the party.
Our own government,
a lot of people
from the White House podium lied to us about his condition and covered it up. And even Ron Klain, the former chief of staff, is now saying things that are crazy when you read them.
The lying is wrong, right, Scott?
I'm gonna hold you to that. I agree. I agree that we lived through the biggest scandal in modern American politics. John Avlon, yes.
All right.
Who was it? I had this story here. Oh, I got to find it. It was a liberal said he cannot believe, what Russia collusion was actually about. I saw that over the weekend. I think
Can't believe the actual story, the truth?
The truth, yeah. Well, no. He believes it. He believes what happened. He just can't believe what they did now that he's found out what they did.
Right.
The Hillary campaign and what the Democrats did on Russia collusion.
Right.
It's like what in the daylights it was Oliver Stone. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Yep. Oliver Stone slammed Democrats for weaponizing federal law enforcement and lying in their attempts to charge the president with Russia collusion during the 2016 election. Wow. He applauded Donald Trump for taking plans to find out what really happened. I'm telling you, everything is bizarro.
It's so
upside,
weird right
sideways.
Now. It's so weird right now.
Whatever it is right now.
Yeah, it's so weird right now.
It's like, what? But he applauded Donald Trump for taking steps to find out what really happened, adding that he is absolutely right, that the federal government has been weaponized to attack political opponents. Russiagate, we paid for it, Stone said. I applaud what Trump is doing, and I hate what they did with Russiagate. I really do. I think it's, again, the line, and selling that to the American people. When asked if he felt Trump was right about there being weaponization of federal government against conservatives, Stone said, yeah, there was and is. But Republicans are in power now, so.
Well, it always takes a long time for the liberals to catch up on the truth. And it was easy to see, you and I, my gosh, it was before this part of the year going back into 2017, because it was March, John Solomon and Sarah A. Carter, when they were with Circa News, started doing homework on a number of things. And there was evidence coming out. You and I had started asking questions very early on. The question is, why didn't these liberals ask questions then?
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, I got an audio cut from Mark Cubin.
Okay.
On the trans issue. He was on with Stephen A. Smith. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
I just burst out laughing when I was like, when I saw this over the weekend. I go, can't wait to play this when we get back. Here we go.
The whole trans sports issue, it's like the old Willie Horton thing. My attitude is if there's a trans athlete, no matter what side, you let the opponent, whether it's an individual sport or a team sport, you let them decide if they wanted to compete against them or not. If they feel they can win, if they feel it's not fair, it's up to them. But to make it just a national issue so that if you weren't supporting the fewer than 10 trans athletes in the NCAA, then, you weren't a good person. People aren't ready for that yet. And you've got to meet people where they are. We've taken this country so far in race relationships, relations, in attitudes towards LGBTQ. It takes time. You can't just force it down people's throat. And instead of trying to get it where the people who are being disadvantaged and being discriminated against are helped, they wanted to make it a campaign issue. Focus on helping the people, not using them to campaign.
Shut up. Shut the hell up.
Blah, 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 blah.
Shut up. As if conservatives made it a national issue.
Right.
Obama made it a national issue.
Yep.
Democrats made it a national issue by changing Title IX. Mark Cuban, are you that illiterate? Siri, are you that intellectually bankrupt? Do you not pay attention to anything? I'm telling you, this guy is pretty stupid.
Yeah.
He really is.
Again, also trying to ride the fence here on this whole thing.
Well, what he's trying to say is
there is no fence to ride here.
What he's trying to say is, well, you need to slowly work them into it. We're not ready to do it right now.
Right.
He goes, then you weren't a good person. People just aren't ready for that yet.
Uh-huh.
The trans issue takes time. You just can't force it down people's throats, which is exactly what the left is saying. Okay, let's calm down a little bit because we need to slowly work this thing in.
Right.
No, it doesn't happen. But Cubin apparently completely is ignorant on who started this entire thing.
Well, and also who you're taking on. This is, to a large extent, you're taking on the parents here.
No.
You're not taking on, it's not left versus right. It's people with daughters. And the left has been telling people with daughters, your daughter needs to get used to male genitalia. Your daughter is the bigot. And he also equates it to other civil rights movements.
Yep.
No, because, again, we have to repeat it. If anyone can belong to a protected class simply by saying so, there are no protected class. The left doesn't care about anything about the civil rights movement.
And remember, this is the Mark Cuban when he talks about the president not messaging effectively. This is a guy who couldn't effectively message one message to the fans of the Dallas Mavericks when he said, no, I'm in charge of basketball operations, and admitted he wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, you had one job. I mean, by that point, he had one job.
In
charge of
one job.
And then pretend like, I didn't know what the Luka thing was all about. I didn't know what that was.
Well, we didn't have it in the contract. Well, then you didn't have it.
Right.
God.
Right.
And you told the fans to placate them with the sale that you did.
Yeah. Play stupid.
God, didn't he place then the whole thing on the transgender issues? People, you got to work them into it. Is what you got to do. No, it doesn't happen.
Slowly working it.
No, you guys made it the national issue. You did.
By the way, he kind of screwed up the LGBTQ thing, didn't he? I heard a bit by Dimitri Martin, the stand-up comedian. He goes, the order of the letters matter because if you had BLTGQ, it would be a totally different sentiment.
I just had enough. I've had so much. I had enough of Cubin a long, long time ago. When remember when he said, "Yeah, I'd run for president." He is as far left as you can get. He's just trying to figure out where the left is wrong and marketing something too quickly. And said, okay, we just got to do this a little bit slower, a little bit slower,
right.
a little bit slower, a little bit
right.
slower.
Well, own
it.
Own what you believe.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that we look at. But I don't believe the thing on the Luka trade. I don't believe this. You know what you believe, and you should say that. You should stand for what you believe in.
Senator Bernie Sanders, AOC are harnessing what they hope will be the pulling power of entertainment, of the entertainment world, planned for the Fighting Oligarchy rally set for LA's Grand Park later this month. Neil Young.
Did we let him back in?
Joan Baez.
Did we let her back in?
And
I don't
more,
think she went anywhere.
And more will be there.
There will also be other people there, volunteers, who will explain to younger people who Neil Young and Joan Baez are.
Well, again, when they say stop, fighting oligarchy, where's the oligarchy? Where has the three branches of government, has one of them disappeared? As we know, it's the people of the United States that voted for Donald Trump for president. He can bring in anybody that he wants to consult him. End of story. If you call that an oligarchy or fascism, you're as clueless as Mark Cubin on trans issues.
Yeah, when they say oligarch rally, I'm thinking some of the oligarchs need to show up. Hey, we're here for our rally. They show up in limos.
I just wonder what's going to happen now. I mean, since Elon Musk really went after Navarro.
And that happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
I didn't see
Did
the
Trump
president
say anything on that?
I didn't see where he responded to it.
I mean, it got vicious.
Yeah. Yeah, he went after Navarro. I don't think, and Elon Musk isn't about to back down from that.
No.
There's no reason for him to do that. But, you keep hearing the media, is Elon Musk out? Well, it was a limited term anyway in terms of his time as a special employee. That was always limited. That was planned from the beginning. And that time will come to an end. So, question is, will it come to an end early? And it might. We'll see. Or the president could say, well, he disagrees on tariffs, but good thing is he's in charge of Doge, and Doge is doing what it's supposed to do. And you just let it go. I'd like to see more of a old-fashioned Twitter war between Navarro and Elon Musk. Let's have that debate. But that's probably not going to happen either.
And also they got into, Stephen A. Smith asked Cubin, why were you supportive of Kamala Harris? Because she wasn't Donald Trump. That's not what you said.
No. Nope.
You said she had great plans and a great mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jeez. Everybody on the left is attempting now to cover their posterior, aren't they?
They really are.
Everybody is
really
about Biden now, all the Biden stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was obvious. It was, shut up.
Oh, we saw it. We were just trying to be kind. We're just... Man.
Oh, and with Harris... With Harris, if there was
surprised she didn't win.
Harris, by saying that, showed she's not qualified. She was never qualified to be president because she had no idea what her own polling was saying.
Here's my question.
She was completely blown away, she says. Completely blown away that she lost. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't fathom that she lost.
Here's my question, though.
Did they not tell her?
Exactly. Were they cheerleading her on all the way to the end? Hey, you're doing great. Your internals are great. You're doing great. Keep going. You're doing great. Keep going. You're doing great. Because what's the bigger play there, right? Think about this. You keep the optimism, the whole joy thing that they tried for 10 minutes. You keep that going. Oh, you also saw the story that when she came out on The View and answered she wouldn't do a thing differently. She would do nothing different. And apparently that's not what she was supposed to say. Remember, was that the same day that Biden walked into the press room and took over the press conference? I don't think it was that day. I think it was another day. She was going to do another sit-down interview on that day that he walked into the press room. But the insiders are saying that she wasn't supposed to say that. That wasn't supposed to be her answer on that. But the big play really was about the cover-up of Biden and the fact that they knew all that everybody knew on the inside and on the left. They knew something serious was wrong, yet he still got to be president. Mm-hmm. He's not capable of running, but somehow he's capable of running the country. And so the bigger play is to keep her thing, whatever facade, going. Remember when, what's her name, the Democratic fundraiser that was talking about how things were, going and everything else. And we said, well, wait a minute. And how money was being spent. And it shouldn't have been spent in some states. Well, you keep the facade up any way you can, because the idea isn't so much to promote her as it is to cover up the Biden thing and keep the questions about Biden at bay. And they could only do that for so long. If a miracle happened and somehow she did win, then great. If she didn't, everything was going to turn to Trump until the Wall Street Journal did their story on what was going on with Biden. And then the media went, oh, yeah. What we meant to say was there was clearly something wrong all along. I really had to ask that question over the weekend when I saw that story. Did they actually even tell her? Hey, your internals are doing great. Get out there and do some more.
Well, the mainstream media was reporting it every day.
Yeah, right.
We knew she was in trouble.
Right.
Wow. That's a bubble within a bubble.
No, I mean, seriously. Hey, you're doing great. Keep going. Keep going. You're doing great. Don't look at your phone. Keep going. Don't Google anything.
Don't listen to the news.
And don't listen to the news.
What was she supposed to say if it wasn't on The View?
That she would have done something. She would have lined out, here's what I will do and do differently.
She was supposed to
Did I not finish that thought? I'm sorry. Okay. She said, I would do nothing different than Biden.
Right.
She said something I can't think of anything. I think that was her answer almost verbatim.
And she was supposed to answer.
She was supposed to say something.
She didn't do what she was told to do.
Right.
You're running for president.
Exactly.
She wasn't. I can imagine if I'm running for president. Well, what am I supposed to do now?
Right. Nancy's on the phone. She wants to have a word.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour, and after our show is done, we record the entire show, and it becomes our podcast, which is on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you cannot listen to one of our great radio stations overnight, you can always catch us on the app because we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. Do it today. Right now, Dow futures down 1,200.
All right. See where the day goes.
S&P down 3.16%. NASDAQ down 3.5%. At the moment, oil, 59.43.
Wow.
It's dropped, 70 last week, was it?
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.